You are about to witness history in the making.
Hello, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Pop Culture Gamers podcast. We've got a special today. I am joined today by developers from OutOfTheBit, who are releasing a new game, Full Void, which is currently on Steam, but is also coming on Xbox and is coming on the Evercade as well as a single release, which we'll get into very shortly. I've been very lucky to try out the game. There are Achievement Hunter videos coming, so don't worry, we'll get you through all of those sort of things as well. But just want to introduce you to everybody. So, Ali, do you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you very much. We're very excited to be here. So I'm Ali Motisi, the company director, and I'm joined today by Miles and Leo.
Yeah, we're artists as well, so we've been doing the pixel art for Full Void and the animation.
Yeah, I also take care of the programming of the game. I'm the main developer of the game.
Yeah, I have to admit, I've been playing the game and I love it. I think it's absolutely great. It's a very sort of it's a great homage to, you know, sort of like those games like Flashback and Another World and stuff like that, which I'm sure is probably where your inspiration came from. So if just to start off, just to sort of like get everybody's gaming chops, as it were, tell us about all of your video game histories. Where did you start? What systems did you start on? And, you know, what have you had over the years as well?
Of course. So we got different experiences. So I'll start and then you guys join in with your experience. So myself, I grew up in a small village in Sicily, in Italy. And there wasn't much to do. But at some point, my neighbor got a Commodore 64. And it was like the best thing ever. We would play the Commodore 64. It would take ages to load any game, but it was amazing nevertheless. So I really wanted one, and I, begged my parents, get me one, and they went out and got me a BBC Micro instead. But having said that, I was a kid. I was very happy with it, and I learned to program. So the BBC Micro came with a manual to program in BASIC, and then advanced to machine language and stuff like that. And I really, love the machine and play with it a lot. And it kind of exposed me to a lot of the British scene as well, because there were a lot of British developers on the BBC Micro, of course. Later on, I moved on to the Amiga, which is my main love as a computer. Like, I did lots of things with the Amiga. Games, music. There you go. Exactly. I absolutely love the Amiga. And so I also play Mega Drive and Super Nintendo friends' houses as well. And, and then I move on to the PC. But the Amiga was like the core of programming or like playing games, making graphics with Deluxe Paint and animations and creating music with Pro Tracker, all that kind of creativity as well. So that's my experience in terms of computers. In terms of games, obviously, all the games on the BBC Micro, the most famous ones. And then on the Amiga, like you mentioned, Another World, Prince of Persia as well, Flashback, Bullfrog games as well, Syndicate, and all the games from Team 17 and Sensible Software as well. Bitmap Brothers, that's my bread and butter, basically, in terms of my background. That's pretty much it.
It's amazing how you've obviously grew up in Sicily, you said, and yet a lot of your background is almost exactly the same as mine.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't
it? Machines, because you speak to people who have come from other countries, and then it's like you sometimes it's completely different.
Yeah,
so it's like because the BBC over here when I was at school, in the 80s was unfortunately far too old for that. I know I don't look it, but. That was the school machine that you had. That was what every school had, was the BBC Micros, Model A's, Model B's, and Masters. Oh, fantastic.
So that's my background. I don't know.
Yeah, so for my background, I'm in my mid-20s, and this is Miles as well for the audio listeners, I guess. I started off, I guess my first console was the PlayStation 2. And so my parents bought that, and I used to play that with my brother and my parents, and they would destroy me on like SSX Tricky. And then a great game. And I played like most of the sequels as well. And then I think the games that I really enjoyed most were the mascot platformers. So things like Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, those were like the big two. And so my introduction to gaming was through the PlayStation 2. After that, I then had a Game Boy and got into Pokemon. And that was probably like my first introduction to pixel art too, was Pokemon and sprites, that sort of thing. And then I had a DS and a Wii and all of the sort of consoles. At some point, then I also had a computer, and I played a lot of Flash games, actually. So at school, we'd always play Flash games, and at home, I'd play Flash games. And then I got into Scratch, so making games using the visual coding language. So that's from MIT, that. And I made loads of games on that. And that was my first introduction to video game development.
Right.
And I think the reason that I've ended up in pixel art is probably because of Scratch. When it was first released, the canvas was limited to, I think, like 480 by 360 pixels. And so we were forced to do pixel art within that. And so I fell in love with that, and I did a lot of like Pokemon spriting as well. And then since then, I've always been a PC gamer, I'd say. Played lots of things like Dota 2, which I've now stopped doing, and recently then got into Baldur's Gate 3. So it's the PC gaming which has really taken a hold of me. But my origin is those PlayStation 2 games, and I would always love to make something like that as well.
Well, if you could have started off on a platform, PlayStation 2 is a tremendous platform to start off with, definitely.
Yeah, my PlayStation 2 is still running as well. So when I would go back to my parents, I always put in some of those classic games in.
Yeah, I've soft modded mine so that I've put on all of my old ROMs onto a hard drive as well. It's a great way of being able to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm Leo. I'm the youngest one in the company. So my background is I have very little experience with retro games and things like that. But I did also grow up with a PlayStation 2 because I had an older brother that kept playing on it. So yeah, similar background to Miles, actually. Like Jak and Daxter was one of my favorite games there. Also played SSX and stuff like that. And also had a Game Boy. Played lots of Pokemon on that as well. After that, my brother kept buying the new PlayStations, so I would start getting into like shooters, like Call of Duty and things like that. And that's where like kind of we drifted more apart. I went more with the modern games, like Call of Duty, and then with the PlayStation 4, I would start playing mostly Call of Duty actually. That's all I can think of at the moment. And then I got into League of Legends. Biggest mistake. I was playing on my MacBook for the longest time, also throughout university. So I was quite limited with the types of games I could play because MacBook is not very gamer friendly. So most of my game time was League of Legends and Minecraft. And then only recently did I transition to a proper PC that my friend helped me build. And then I got to start exploring more games on Steam and mostly just taking recommendations from everyone on the team now. That's my background.
Yeah, oh great. So what are all of your favorite systems then? Do you have a favorite one?
Yeah, again, I already said the Amiga. I also went to the Amiga event that Ravi Abbott put on last July, which was amazing. There is still a great community of Amiga players. I do have an Amiga 1200 now, which is modded with a SD drive, and it's got lots of games and stuff. It's still a great community, just for fun, not for business. Yeah. And Mega Drive also like Sega in general. Obviously, Nintendo Switch and the classic. I also left out the second part. I also went into PlayStation 1, 2, and 3 as well. And I stopped at 3, to be fair. I still have my PlayStation 3. I never felt, because then I'm playing more on Steam at the moment, so I never felt like upgrading. So I'm playing on Steam and my Nintendo Switch as well. Those are my top at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, like PlayStation 2 for me holds a special place in my heart. That, but I would say PC now is my favorite. Just the flexibility of it, being able to play multiplayer. That's really what draws me to gaming, is the sort of social aspect of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with Miles as well. PC is just the most versatile in my opinion, and just the library is huge. And you have more freedom as well.
Yeah. On that note, I have to say, we got a Steam Deck in the office to port Full Void, and I fell in love with the Steam Deck. It's a great machine.
It is. Yeah, I've got one as well. It's absolutely fantastic. As a matter of fact, I've been slowly upgrading mine. I've got the gully stick hallmark sticks put in, so get rid of stick drift. I'm going to be doing a video on that shortly. But it's a great little one for tinkering, and you can take it right to bits.
It's fantastic.
Yes, brilliant.
That's amazing. Yeah, Full Void. Like when we first ported it onto the Steam Deck as well, it fits so nicely onto that resolution. So for pixel art games, it's really nice to play as well.
I think, and it looks great on the Steam Deck as well. I must admit, 'cause I played it on there as well, and
amazing,
amazing.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. Okay, so obviously, we've mentioned some of the influences, but what would you say, sort of like in terms, because Out of the Bit, you've done some different sort of games, a soccer game and like a sort of Micro Machine sort of style game. What would you say are some of your bigger influences in terms of gaming generally?
Yeah, definitely. Again, I kind of wanted to recreate the games I loved as a child, but also give them a modern twist. So take those games, and now we got more memory, we can do more animation pixel art. Some of the games we got online, like Super Arcade Football and Super Arcade Racing, you can play online, and we got cross-play, so you can play on iPhone, you can play on Android, you can play on PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, PC, and there's cross-play as well. The game is also bigger, it's got more features, and it's got our own twist that we add to each game, so it's not a copy of the games of the past, it's just in the same like a spiritual success in a way, or like an evolution, like Flashback or Another World was to Prince of Persia. It's similar game, but with their own twist and their own story. And so that's for me what inspired me to create those games. I don't know about you guys, if you want to jump in at anything.
Well, I'll let you go firstly, because you were on the project sooner than I was.
Yeah, I joined the project at the very start of it. So Full Void has been the one game that I've been working on now for the past 2 years with Ali. I mean, similar kind of like Ali told me to try out Limbo and Inside, and they're just amazing games that like we really could take a lot of inspiration from. And I had some experience with what was it called? Nightmare.
Little
Nightmares.
Well,
Little Nightmare. Although it's like I'm not the best horror game player, let's just say that. I get spooked quite easily, but I love the vibes of Little Nightmares, and wanted to get some of that into the game as well.
So I joined sort of a year into Full Void, so what I sort of brought to the project wasn't like the initial inspirations, and actually a lot of the games that Full Void is inspired by are quite new to me. And so I guess there's a sort of benefit of that, in that because I'm not that familiar with the source material, I can bring in my own ideas from other games that I've played. I really like puzzle games, things like Professor Layton. So I really wanted to get into the puzzle aspect of that. And, I've played games like Portal and other puzzle platformers, but not the retro kind. So it was sort of bringing the art style into the game. But then when it came to the game design, it was sort of newer, fresher ideas as well. And I think then combining that and learning as well from Ali and all of the references that I would then played, I think is quite a fun aspect of the development.
Yeah. And I think the game does have some really good sort of like puzzle aspects. There was one bit that got me where you've got the 4 pipes and you've got to overheat them. And I was sort of like kept trying to go and doing the same loop of trying to send a robot to do one, me do the other, then run down to the bottom, and it was just not quite the amount of time to do that. But when I figured it out, I was sort of like, that was,
I'm glad we put the checkpoint in there, because during our playtesting, people will die. We have to redo the entire section. So, okay, let's put a checkpoint. That's one of the things we want to do. We don't want to be so unforgiving. You take some of the classic, they're like unplayable without save states.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's the way games were back then. But now things are different. In that sense, Full Void is also a modern game, a bit like Limbo or Inside as well. Or Little Nightmares.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great sort of like blend of the old and what was the best of the old and the best of the new.
Yeah, that's what we try.
Definitely. Well, I think you've succeeded on that one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So one of the things that you mentioned as well, another game, because you said that Inside as one of the inspirations. I don't know if you've ever played Planet Alpha.
Not really.
No, that's one that's worth a look because it's kind of like it's like a futuristic version of Inside. You know, got alien robots taking over this world. There's no dialogue or anything like that. But another great little game. I remember seeing the developers there. You know, way back at EGX or something other like that.
I'll check it out. Thanks.
Yeah, sounds interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's a good game. Okay, so Ali, if I come to you first, obviously you're the founder of OutOfTheBit.
Yeah.
So what inspired you really to sort of like found the company, and what's your sort of vision?
Yeah, like I said, I love computer ever since I was like 8 when I got my BBC Micro. And one of the things I love was going to the newsstand and get magazines, like gaming magazines. And I love reading like reviews, but also previews of the game, or work in progress, or dev diaries as well. That really inspired me. I was reading, I remember, Team 17 diaries at some point, and the fact that they said we go to the pub and we sketch out the new game, that really is like yeah, that's what I want to do in a way. But obviously it took me a bit of time to get a degree and then move to England and start my company. You know, life gets in the way and stuff, kids, but I got there in the end. So I got my company and trying to follow the dream of creating games that I like to play, and now also games I like to play together with my kids. I got 2 daughters, they're twins, and we like to play games together. But many games they got like violence and gore, and I cannot play them with the kids. So that's why Full Void, even though it's a bit spooky, you can actually play as a family together. There is nothing like, there is no violence or gore as opposed to other games, for instance. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, that it was reading magazines and looking at other developers back in the day really inspired me. So I don't know for you guys. Obviously, that's more for the company, but you can answer that as well in the sense why you got into gaming as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think also, particularly with game development as well, and I sort of going to hijack this question in a way of like talking about OutOfTheBit and why I quite like this company, because Full Void's quite a pivot from a lot of our other games. It's sort of the first within that element, and for me as well is these really creative games, very story driven, very art based, and so that's why I really like OutOfTheBit as a company and what we're trying to do and our sort of our, I don't know, motto or, you know, the idea behind that. So
yeah, I agree.
Same.
So obviously you've released a few games. You've got Super Arcade Racing and Super Arcade Football. What was your motivation for developing these games? Because I think I can see where it came from, but I just thought it'd be interesting to get your view on it.
Yeah, again, I was a fan of Sensible Soccer back in the day. I play other games as well, similar type of games, and I really wanted to have my own twist. We wanted to have a game that you could play together with friends as well or family in a co-op scenario or versus. So in Super Arcade Football, for instance, you can play together in the same team against the AI, or you can do like 2 versus 2. So it's a family game or an office game. Let's say you can set up a custom tournament, league or knockout tournament, and play together in the office. Save the state and maybe continue, which is something we do as well. So it's and plus add the online and also stupid modifiers like meteorites and stuff like that. So it starts from like a Sensible Soccer kind of baseline, but then we add lots of features. It's something I really felt was missing in the market, because many football games are quite complex nowadays, which is great. Again, there is a market for that. I remember before I started working on Super Arcade Football, a friend of mine got an Xbox and asked me to play FIFA together with him. I haven't played FIFA since PlayStation 2 or something, and I really struggled with it. I had to take, I don't know, 10 minutes to learn the controls, and I said, you know what, I'm going to make a simple arcade game. You can just pick up and play. It's one button on the stick, and that's it. And kids can play it. We went to many exhibitions, and people absolutely love Super Arcade Football. And the same is true for racing. I really like the idea of top-down racing games, and I just wanted to make one to play myself with a story. And it's a bit retro. It's set in the 80s as well, so there is a lot of synth music. It's just something I wanted to do, and had this idea of creating this game. It's just fun. It's just fun to create a world with its own obstacles and characters and make it alive. But yeah, the reference could be many top-down classic games, racing games, something even Team 17, like Overdrive from Team 17, for instance, similar type of game. So that's a kind of inspiration behind it.
Yeah, because I did think that the Super Arcade Football was very reminiscent of Kickoff back on the Commodore.
Well.
Yeah.
Kickoff goal.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So obviously your latest game, we talked about some of the inspirations, but Full Void's obviously out now on Steam and coming on Xbox on the 12th. Can you tell us what the game is about and where you came from, the ideas in terms of that sort of like creative structure for the game?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, Full Void tells the story of a teenager that something is strange in this world, right? Something's gone wrong, and you're alone. All the people are inside their houses, so you start the game. I won't spoil the game, but something happened. Clearly, something's not right, and people are at home. They are connected to some VR machine, and it's up to you to discover the story. In a way, that's kind of a metaphor what happened during lockdown, where many people couldn't go out, no one was on the street, people working from home, so they stay connected from there. So kids will see parents connected all the time, maybe felt alone. So we just wanted to convey the feeling of kids felt like kind of the way they felt during lockdown. I know because I know what my kids felt when school was shut down and they couldn't go to school. It was really hard for them. Obviously, they understood the importance of lockdown, but it still was a change, a sudden change. It was imposed to them. And that's what we wanted to explore in a gaming world with Full Void. And again, as you play the game, you discover more, but things are like a metaphor for something else as well. So there is a double side to Full Void. In terms of gameplay, it's a classic cinematic puzzle platformer. We also added the ability to hack machinery as well in the game, and there are some mini games and also some voxel art, which we mixed together with the pixel art, and Miles and Leo did some of the voxel art as well. So it combines really well with the graphic style of the game. It doesn't clash. So that's pretty much it. I don't know if you guys would like to add anything to it. Yeah.
No, I think you pretty much summed it all up there.
Okay.
Okay, that's great. So, I mean, where I became aware of the game is obviously, I think, it's a very great thing for yourselves as well, is the fact that the game was also highlighted as the first ever Evercade cartridge. That's a solo release. And you've also got the special edition, which I have to admit, as soon as I saw it, I went onto whatever website it was where the primary place doing it, and I ordered the special edition version because I thought I like the look of that. But there's been a few indie releases, such as Indie Heroes and a couple of ones with just 2 on the cartridge. What led you to sort of go to the Evercade platform, and how did that exclusive sort of deal, how did that form?
Yeah, it was a great kind of thing that happened. We kind of for some time considered creating our own console, to put these kind of games and work with other developers, but it's such a big endeavor to do. And then we became aware of Blaze, and we said, okay, those guys are doing it, which is fantastic. But I also happened to go to an exhibition, which was in Nottingham over December, a gaming exhibition. And I met Liam and Mark from the Evercade fan magazine. And they told me, okay, you got those games, you should get in contact with those guys. to port your game, that your games are really good fit for this platform. And I cannot thank them enough, because I got to the hotel and I got an email from Liam saying, I put you in contact with the CEO and CTO of the company. And I said, yeah, thank you very much. And then I got in touch with them, and they came to the office in Wimbledon in London, and we got to know each other, and they saw Full Void, and they say, oh, we really like this game. Let's talk. And then things move on from there. We came up with the idea of the special edition as well. And since we got our own engine in the game, so we're very old school with everything from scratch. We got our engine in C, and it's quite easy to port to different platforms. That's why we support so many platforms. So we got in touch, and we managed to do a native port for Evercade, taking advantage of the entire machine, which was quite easy. And Raf is not here today, but he's one of the developers. He helps with porting, and he did a fantastic job, and he had the best time porting the game to Evercade. The guys at Blaze have been fantastic to work with. They've been really helpful and very enthusiastic, and coming up with ideas as well for what to put in the box for the standard edition and special edition. We had this idea of doing a comic as well in the game. So we put a comic with the backstory of the game, and then we put an art book on the special edition. So maybe the guys can tell more about those two items.
Yeah, I mean, the whole sort of collaboration with Blaze was such a fun experience, because obviously coming into this, I was expecting to just be doing a lot of pixel art, and then we get this opportunity, and you get to do a bit of graphic design as well. But we're brainstorming all these ideas of like, what can we put in this box? We can do like stickers. We could do, because I think we've got stickers in it now, don't we? We could do badges, maybe even like a vinyl figurine. But we didn't end up going down that route. But there were so many different ideas, and I think I suggested the art book, or someone suggested the art book, and then we ended up making that. And that was really fun as well, because for me, coming onto the project late, I got to see a lot of the early development images that I hadn't actually seen initially. And so collating all of that together into one pile and really reflecting on the artistic process for the project gave like such a great cohesive view. And I think it's just a really exciting thing as well to share with people. And then working on the manual as well. And then just the whole idea of designing the cartridge. So, we got to pick out the colors, and we did the graphics for the cartridge, and it just all sort of seamlessly came together in this nice tangible physical product, which really is something special as well.
Yeah, Leo helped with the comic as well, with the backstory.
Drawing the comic. It was fun also to like mess around, and we were like, oh, we kind of want to go for like this kind of like retro style, since it's not pixel art. We had, again, more freedom to mess around with that as well. We thought about, how can we tell like the backstory of the game and make it really something like that people want to read and have. It was super fun working on it with everyone.
Yeah, and again, Blaze was great, and I have to say what they put together is unbelievable, and it's such a good value for money, both the normal and special edition. Not just our game, anything they put out is really great value for money.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact that they do the free, game every month as well. Because I've just put out a video today on that, but my VS is right to hand, because I've got most of my stuff around me here. So they're great consoles, but presumably the development. I know you said that it's an easy port to do sort of like natively, but presumably it must be very different doing stuff for Microsoft to do stuff for Evercade, is it? Or is it a pretty similar process?
True in a way, but it's quite similar to Linux and Steam Deck, for instance. So we already had done that, so it was very easy to adapt the Linux port to the Evercade.
Right, okay. Yeah, okay, brilliant. So Leo and Miles, if just come on to you guys, is Full Void the first game that you've been involved with in the development with, or have you been involved in other projects? If so, which ones?
Sure. So Full Void is the second game that I've worked on. Before that, I worked on a game called Shadows of Doubt, which is a PC game which got released earlier this year in early access, and that's a voxel-based game. And so it was coming from that project onto this. I brought a lot of the sort of knowledge that I learned from that within the art style as well. So that's a sort of cyberpunky neo-noir art style, low resolution. And that was a great project to work on. And then this as well, kind of completely different, because in there I was working 3D, now I'm working much more 2D. But because it was a voxel-based game, I was able to use the knowledge of voxels that I had learnt there and bring it over to this project and use it in a completely different way, something really creative. And that was really fun. And it brought like such a different element to some of the puzzles as well, really expanded what we could do. And then before that as well, I've done like game jam games and stuff, and I used to make a lot of games with my brother as well. So, but in terms of full release games, this is my second.
Brilliant.
In my case, this is my first game. I joined the company at the start of the project. And before that, I just had a very art-based background and was very like catered towards comic kind of art, and with a bit of background in animation as well. So it was also really fun to bring all of that knowledge into this project, which is entirely pixel-based, and kind of find a nice mix to make it just look even nicer than it already is.
Yeah, cool. So in terms of the game itself, obviously you've got a very sort of like distinct art style in there, which is clearly inspired by games like Another World and Flashback and other games of that sort of era. But how did you go about developing the look for your game?
Well, from the start, Ali already had this vision that he just had in mind, like, oh, I want this to be kind of this dark setting where the light kind of guides you, right? And really let the kind of like the light be the main source of gameplay essentially, yeah, and we have it like linked together, and then just make it look really cool, right? And then so it was a lot of just trial and error of trying to like iterate and get that one image that like clicked with what we have in mind, right? And then when Miles joined as well, he managed to add all of his knowledge and experience onto that, and became this mix of like Ali's vision and our knowledge and our own vision as well into this final product.
Yeah. And then you also had Dave Swan as well,
right,
at the initial development of the game. And so there was a few prototypes, and you can see this in the art book as well on the Evercade. It looks completely different, but it's also very similar. So the level design is the same, but it's a different art style. It's almost more Metroidvania,
right?
And much more retro aesthetic as well, because Dave is like a classic retro pixel artist.
Yeah.
And then so it was much lower resolution as well. And then Leo did a ton of concept art with this bright colors. And so when I came onto the project, it was like, this is what we want to achieve. This is what we currently have. And then I brought, my pixel art knowledge into that, and and then showed Leo some stuff, and then he showed me some stuff, and we just sort of went with it from there. And even like from the start, there's an evolution within the art style throughout the game, and you may be able to see this as well. And so some bits are like really, really strong as well, and we sort of build on it throughout. So
Yeah, we should also add towards the end of the project, we also added Tom to the project. He's also a pixel artist and animator, and he brought a lot of knowledge and really did a fantastic job with all the animations and the intro, and together with Leo and Miles, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you're through playing the whole game. I did think each area has its own sort of style as well. So when you're starting out sort of like in the wilderness, going through the trains, going through the sewers, and then the building, and the
power station, and
all of that sort of thing, and they're all very consistent with each other, but also each area has its own look, which is really really cool. I mean, one of the things that struck me about playing the game as well is it's got a very sort of atmospheric sound effect with it, and obviously it's important when you're producing a game that the sound and the visuals marry each other up. So how did you go about marrying up the audio with the visual sort of effects?
Yeah, that was something we had in mind from the beginning, to have very little music, mostly ambient sounds in the games, to immerse you in the atmosphere. and use music really when it was important, like a chase or the ending, for instance. So the intro, some comics. So what we did, we worked with Robin. She's very, very talented. She's super young and also retro at the same time. And she can create music in mod format, like the Amiga Tracker format. Also export sounds with very low footprint in terms of megabytes and stuff. So she did a fantastic job to give us a good base for all the sound effects and then the music. She took care of the main soundtrack and everything else. She's very easy to work with as well. And then also towards the end of the project, Jack joined us to work on the game. He did an amazing job with the ambient music and the spooky sound effects, and really, really brought the game to the next level of like an easier scare, like feeling scared when you play the game, and really jump scare feeling of being surprised. Did such a fantastic job. Really knew what he needed to do and just went one level after the other. We iterated a lot to have the right feeling, but I think he just got it straight away and did in 3 months. He did an amazing job. Towards the end of the project.
Yeah. So and then in terms of like marrying those visuals as well to the audio, so a lot of what we did, we didn't have the audio to begin with. We sort of just came up with the ideas, and we would, use films as references, and then we would pass those on to Jack and sort of explain like, oh, this is what we would like, and then we'd say, okay, a little bit more horror, a little bit less. And actually, when he then came onto the project as well, it was really exciting because he really brought to life the visuals that we'd envisioned, and really that horror and tension aspect of the game. So there was some areas that we added later on in the development once Jack had joined, when we really understood what the project, like how to really maximize that ambience. And then there was a lot of sort of just I don't know how to explain it, but I'll just leave it there.
No, you did mention a few times like, oh, I look at this area now and it feels different just because of the audio. Like really, really like
actually
change the experience.
That's what I was because we've got Easter eggs in the game. And so there was one where Leo had done a concept for it, and then I was tasked to tidy it up, and I did that, and then Jack put audio onto it, and then I looked at it and went, this is far too happy. With the audio that he's put, I now could like visualize a way to really bring that sort of horror quality to it. And so I just like completely darkened the space and made it way more eerie and unnerving.
Mm-hmm. Oh, cool stuff. So in terms of, obviously there are several different types of enemies. We've got the main sort of like style robot that chases after you in different scenes, the dog, spider, centipede, and a worm. What were sort of like your inspirations for some of those designs, either in games or in films or whatever? And how did you go about them? And were there any designs that didn't quite hit the cutting room floor, as it were, and didn't appear in the game?
Yeah, maybe Leo, you can take this one because it was really fun to come up with that.
Especially from the very beginning. It was a very different concept.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
Well, when we first started designing the game, and we were like kind of picking still the direction of Full Void, was it going to be like action or like horror or sci-fi? During our first prototype, the very first enemy that Dave actually animated was a grandma that would chase after you. Yeah, I know. Which is a bit different from what we have now. So we started off with a grandma chasing you. Well, she was scary in her own way.
People tried.
But a lot of people would kind of try to like turn around and fight back, which was not what we intended for them to do. So from there, we started iterating a bit more, and we started having just kind of like a big guy, essentially, kind of like chasing after, just so like you don't try to fight back. Then we realized a lot of people still kind of fight back, because if you have a gaming background, you're not scared of a big guy. You can probably beat one. So we decided to stray away from a human figure and start going with something more alien instead, and that kind of also fit into the whole world that we've built. So it just made sense. So then we started going towards more alien figures, and that's around the time when Miles joined as well. was when we were reworking these enemies that chase after you. So Miles actually designed the first enemy that you'll encounter in the game. What do we call him?
We called him the boogeyman in the just because it's sort of that's what the kids would name him.
Yeah.
So it's just it's this generic creature that's just running around capturing kids, and like that sort of design as well was inspired by a lot of what Leo had, and I just sort of came on and just tweaked a few things and did it in pixel art. But and then the rest of the creatures as well. I'm going to try explain it without too many spoilers, but a lot of it is sort of based on animals. Essentially, is the idea is animals that are weird, and we wanted to give a sense for players to be like, something's not quite right about this animal. Why is that? And then you sort of learn throughout the story of like where these things have come from.
Yeah,
exactly.
I can add as well, at the time we were changing the enemy, I was reading again one of my favorite mangas from when I was a teenager, which is A Guyver by Armor. It's still unfinished. The guy hasn't finished the manga, but it's a great manga nevertheless. And there is all this concept of biology and changing biology, and I don't know, I was kind of inspired by that too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's really cool. So obviously there's loads in the game. What bits are you each most proud of?
Okay.
Who wants to go first?
Okay. I don't know. Yeah, I'm really proud of the games. I think it's all the games we made is my absolute favorite. And just the way it comes together, the way we do custom stuff that we can do, because the game is not designed a way they will design a game for the Mega Drive where it had 64K of memory, right? So we don't have those limitations. So we could just really say, oh, would it be cool if you did that and this will happen? And we could just do it. We could even do a full screen animation, custom mini game. So just the way we put the game together and it works, I think is something fresh, especially for pixel art. And I really like this idea of handcrafted game. In an age of AI, 3D programs, it's so good to work with our talented artists like Leo, Miles, and Tom, in Jack and Robin as well for audio, to put everything together and make like an interactive adventure. That's what we love to do. So we really enjoy working on the project. We're very proud of it, and we want to do more of it in the future. So that's my answer. I don't know.
Yeah. On my end, well, we took our time to really polish this game and really leave no corners untouched. So it sounds cliche, but I could say that literally every single part of the game I am proud of, because we really left like with no excuses. We really like strive for excellence with every single drawing that we did. But personally, the one I'm most attached to, I'd say, would be the pizza screen, which you see at the start of the game, after the rooftops. And that is because that was kind of the first screen, the first background I worked on where it clicked for us, right? And that was the one that we then proceeded to use for reference every time we would create a new background. And we would go like, okay, we want to get what we got here, right? And it's also a nice piece because David started working on it, then I took over it, and then Miles took over it as well. So it's kind of like a collaborative piece that ended up being one of our like core images for the whole game. So I would say that would be one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I mean, what I'm most proud of, and I'm not even responsible for this, is the size of the game. It's like the actual memory of it. That's something that I always, tell people is it's a tiny game, and I think it's
in megabytes, 43 megabytes.
43 megabytes, of which like 60% is just audio.
Yeah.
Something like that. It's absolutely tiny, and and the fact that we have our own engine as well, like that's something that I'm very proud of. For the bits that I'm personally responsible for, what I really like is the whole sort of voxel model stuff, because initially when I came on, we were doing sprite layering, and it was a really complicated way, and you're trying to visualize these models in your head, and it just didn't work. But then doing that, making the voxel models, and I had to use a completely different technique to what I usually had, because it's not a 3D model, it's a 2D image, really, is what it is once you port it into the game. So the stuff that I made with that, I was really happy with, and actually I ended up using that for the achievement screens as well. So we've got these voxel models rotating holograms for the achievement screen.
Yeah, I did like the achievement screen actually, because that's for me as somebody who does achievement hunting videos, it's useful to sort of like show them it not with the like the side panels that come up or what.
Sure. Yeah.
It was like a bit of a mess, whereas doing something like that, and also it just gives that extra little bit back. Does it in terms of you've got the achievement and there's a like little reward of this rotating.
Yeah, it's like a little trophy room is the way that I sort of imagined it, rather than like a checklist kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then as well, the title screen. I really like the title screen.
I was about to say the same.
It's one of my favorite pieces that I did.
Yeah, the title screen really sort of like sets the image of the game as well, so it's really nice. I mean, I think Ali, you mentioned earlier on about kids in lockdown, and I really did like your message at the end as well. I thought that was a very sort of touching, and I think it's actually a very touching story with what happens at the end. We won't do any spoilers because we want people to play the game and enjoy it. But I enjoyed the sort of like story that it was told as well. So in terms of now, obviously, presumably once it's out on the Evercade, are you looking at PlayStation as well, or is that?
Yes, PlayStation as well.
Yeah. Okay. So what's next for Out of the Bit?
Oh, good question. So I mean, I can say we already started working on the next project. Okay, and we are very, very excited about it. We cannot wait to share more. We cannot share much at the moment. I'd say if you like football, you're going to like this, but this time will be a more colorful game because we are out of lockdown and we want to try something else. But still, it will be an adventure, an interactive adventure in a way. Still 2D kind of puzzle platform, but there will be a lot of new stuff as well. So.
Well, I do hope that you do keep us updated about what you're going to do in the future, because it's this has certainly been great speaking to you, and I'd love to speak to you about future projects.
Same.
So, as I mentioned before, the game's already out on Steam. It's coming out on Xbox. Do you want to tell us when it's available on what platforms?
Of course, so it's already out on Steam. It supports Mac, PC, and Linux, Steam Deck as well, like we mentioned. And then on Xbox will be out next week on the 12th, and then same with Nintendo Switch. But people can already pre-order the game now on Nintendo Switch eShop and Xbox, and they get 20% off on the price of the game. So you can do it now, and then PlayStation, once we know the date, will announce on our Twitter. So we are Out of the Bit on Twitter, or X. Sorry, we got delivery. So that's it. Yeah, so we're going to be out on PlayStation soon as well. But as soon as we got news, we'll put it on our social media. And also we're going to be at WASD next week in London. So there will be WASD IGN event in London, which we'll be very happy to be part of. So if anyone of the listeners are around, want to come and say hello, they will be very welcome. And we're going to be attending EGX as well in October. So we're going to be busy promoting Full Void as well.
I might try and get to EGX, but unfortunately I'm not going to get to WASD.
Okay.
I will look you up if I do get there, but it'd be lovely to see you in person.
Please do. Amazing.
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming on this special podcast. Really enjoyed the game. Looking forward to the Evercade release and playing it on there as well. And that's it. So if you've enjoyed this show, if you're a listener, then please don't forget to subscribe, because that would really fill our void in subscriptions. Okay. Thank you all very much. I will see you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us on your podcast.
Yeah.
Been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.